For 300 years, humanity walked among the stars as the galaxy's quiet species. They joined the Galactic Council not with weapons or demands, but with open hands and curious minds. The other species watched them with confusion, though with their massive warships, could not understand why humans built hospitals on conquered worlds instead of prisons. The Empire, known for crushing rebellion with fire, laughed at human diplomats who spoke of peace treaties and trade agreements. The galaxy had a simple rule: the strong took what they wanted, the weak served or died. Every species understood this truth, every species except humanity. Ambassador Sarah stood before the Galactic Council many times over the decades. She spoke of cooperation. She offered technology freely. She asked nothing in return except friendship. The other ambassadors called her naive behind closed doors. They called humanity a species of fools who had somehow stumbled into space travel without learning the basic laws of survival. They were the first to test human patience. They attacked a small human colony on the border world of New Haven. 3,000 civilians died in the first strike. The galaxy waited for humanity's response. They expected anger. They expected war. Instead, Ambassador requested a meeting. She asked for peace. She offered compensation to the if they would simply leave human space. The Admiral laughed so hard that his translator device nearly broke. He took this as proof of human weakness. He ordered his fleet to attack 2 more colonies. Humanity evacuated the civilians. They did not fire back. They simply moved their people to safety and asked again for peace. The Galactic Council began to lose respect for the young species. How could any race survive without the will to fight? The Emperor made a public speech calling humans the galaxy's pets, useful for their strange technology but too soft to ever matter in real politics. Years passed. The attacks continued. Different species took turns testing human patience. They raided human trade ships. They kidnapped human scientists. They burned human farms on distant worlds. Each time humanity responded the same way. They protected their people. They rebuilt what was destroyed. They asked for peace. Ambassador grew old in her position. Her hair turned white. Her face gained lines from years of stress, but she never stopped believing in her mission. She told the council that humanity valued life above pride. She said that revenge was a poison that destroyed the one who held it. The other ambassadors nodded politely and continued their plans to carve up human territory. The breaking point came on a world called Eden Prime. It was humanity's most beautiful colony. 12 million people lived there among forests that touched the sky and oceans that glowed blue at night. Families had built lives there for 5 generations. Children grew up knowing no other home. The Collective, a union of 3 aggressive species, decided that Eden Prime would make a perfect military base. They did not bother with diplomacy. They sent a fleet of 200 warships. They gave the human population 1 standard day to leave or die. 12 million people could not evacuate in 1 day. Everyone knew this. The Collective knew this. They simply did not care. Ambassador made one final appeal. She stood before the Galactic Council with tears in her eyes. She begged for intervention. She asked the great powers to stop this massacre. The Council voted. The result was unanimous. They would not interfere with the Collective's right to expand. Sarah walked out of the council chamber for the last time. She had given her entire life to peace. She had believed that patience and kindness would eventually win respect. She had been wrong. That night she sent a message to Earth. It contained only 3 words. Release the Guardians. The galaxy had always wondered why humanity never fought back. They assumed it was weakness. They assumed humans simply lacked the ability to wage war. They were about to learn the truth. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply chosen not to. For 300 years, while other species built weapons of war, humanity had built something else. They called it the Guardian Network. It was the most advanced military system ever created. It existed in secret, hidden in the dark spaces between stars, waiting for a day that humanity hoped would never come. The collective fleet arrived at Eden Prime exactly on schedule. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took position around the planet. The admiral in command sent one final warning to the surface: surrender or burn. The response came not from Eden Prime, but from empty space itself. Ships appeared, not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of vessels materialized from nowhere, emerging from hidden stations that had waited in silence for centuries. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen: sleek, dark, built for one purpose only. The collective admiral had exactly 4 seconds to feel fear before his flagship ceased to exist. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. The Guardian fleet did not negotiate. It did not warn. It did not show mercy. 200 collective warships became dust and debris floating in the void around Eden Prime. Not a single human vessel was scratched. But humanity was not finished. Within hours, Guardian fleets appeared at every collective simultaneously. They did not attack civilians. They did not bomb cities. Instead, they destroyed every military installation, every weapons factory, every warship in dock. The collective's entire military capability was erased in a single night. The same thing happened to The same thing happened to every species that had attacked humanity over the past 3 centuries. Guardian ships appeared without warning and systematically dismantled their ability to wage war. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. For the first time in history, every ambassador attended. They watched recordings of the Guardian fleet in action. They saw weapons that should not exist. They saw ships that moved faster than physics allowed. They saw a military force that made their greatest armadas look like children's toys. A new human ambassador stood before the council. His name was David, grandson of Sarah. He carried himself differently than his grandmother. There was no softness in his eyes, no hope for friendship, only cold, absolute purpose. He spoke clearly so that every species would understand. Humanity had always believed in peace. They still believed in peace, but they had learned a hard truth over 300 years of patience. Some species only understood one language: power. The Guardian network had been built not for conquest, but for protection. Every human colony now had a Guardian fleet in orbit. Every human trade route now had Guardian patrols. Any ship that attacked a human vessel would be destroyed. Any species that threatened human lives would lose the ability to threaten anyone ever again. This was not a declaration of war. This was a statement of fact. Ambassador David looked around the silent chamber. He saw fear in eyes that had once held only contempt. He saw powerful species who had spent centuries bullying others now realizing they were no longer the strongest predators in the galaxy. He told them that humanity still wanted peace. They still offered friendship to any species willing to give it. Trade agreements were still on the table. Cultural exchanges were still welcome. Nothing had changed except one thing. The cost of human blood had just become infinite. The galaxy changed after that day. The great empires stopped their wars of expansion. The raiding fleets returned to port and never left again. Species that had built their entire cultures around conquest suddenly found themselves looking for new identities. Some resented humanity. They whispered about revenge in dark corners, but none dared act. The Guardian network watched everything. It waited in the darkness between stars, patient and eternal, ready to protect humanity's children no matter where they traveled. Others chose a different path. They approached humanity with genuine respect for the first time. They asked how humans had built such technology. They asked how humans had maintained discipline for 300 years without using their power. They asked the question that haunted every leader in the galaxy: why had humanity waited so long? The answer was simple, but difficult for most species to understand. Humanity had hoped they would never need the Guardians. They had believed that patience and kindness might actually work. They had given the galaxy every chance to choose peace. 300 years of chances. 300 years of turning the other cheek. Only when the lives of 12 million innocent people hung in the balance did humanity finally accept the truth. Some lessons could only be taught through strength. Ambassador Sarah lived long enough to see the change. She watched from a medical bed on Earth as the galaxy transformed into something safer. She watched species that had once laughed at her now asking for trade partnerships. She watched the raiding fleets disappear and the war profiteers go bankrupt. On her final day, her grandson sat beside her. She held his hand and told him she was sorry. Sorry that peace had not been enough. Sorry that he had to be the one to show the galaxy what humanity could do. David told his grandmother that she had nothing to apologize for. Her patience had given humanity the moral authority to act. Her 300 years of trying had proven to every watching species that humans were not aggressors. When the Guardians finally struck, no one could claim humanity had started the conflict. No one could paint humans as villains. Sarah had given humanity something more powerful than any weapon. She had given them the right to defend themselves without guilt. The old ambassador smiled at that. She closed her eyes for the last time, at peace with what her species had become. Years later, a monument was built on Eden Prime. It stood at the exact spot where the collective fleet had been destroyed. The monument contained no weapons, no warships, no symbols of military might. Instead, it showed a human hand reaching up toward the stars, open and welcoming. Below the hand, carved in every language known to the galaxy, were words that would define humanity's place among the stars forever. We offered friendship first, remember that. Every species that visited the monument did remember. They remembered the 300 years of patience. They remembered the single night of power. They remembered the lesson that humanity had taught the entire galaxy. True strength was not measured by how quickly a species could strike. It was measured by how long they could wait, how much they could endure before striking became necessary. Humanity had proven itself the strongest species in known space, not because of the Guardian network, not because of their impossible technology, but because they had the wisdom to know when fighting was the last resort and the courage to follow through when that last resort finally arrived. No species in the galaxy would ever forget that lesson. Not ever,